What does it really mean to be the grittiest player in NFL history? Well, for Jim Otto, it meant 74 surgeries, over 20 broken noses, and eventually losing his leg altogether.
Pain is something that is a frame of mind, too. You can't allow this stuff to get to your head.
And yet, through all of it, he kept suiting up.
He was one of the toughest players that ever played in football.
In fact, he went 15 straight seasons without missing a single game.
Jim Otto was an Iron Man. Jim Otto prided himself. I'm going to start, I'm going to play, I'm going to be there in the middle every game.
Meet Jim Otto, the grittiest player in NFL history.
Numerous knee, shoulder, elbow injuries led to 74 operations. Yeah, okay, he's a badass.
Hell yeah, dude. It's Jim Otto.
Oh, my God.
Coming out of college, Jim Otto was 6'2", 205 pounds, which is tiny for a center. To put that in perspective, the average NFL center today weighs over 300 pounds. Scouts took one look at him and decided he couldn't survive in the trenches, and that's why he went undrafted in 1960. But that snub turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to him, because while the NFL passed him over, the brand new American Football League was looking for guys who were hungry, tough, and willing to prove themselves. Otto fit that mold perfectly.
American Football League came in and they needed bodies, and I was a body, so they drafted me.
So when the Oakland Raiders came calling, he jumped at the chance to prove everyone wrong. The Raiders' first season was rough. They finished 6-8, a forgettable debut in a league that many doubted would even survive. In fact, they didn't even have a permanent home stadium, bouncing between Kezar Stadium in San Francisco and Candlestick Park, before eventually settling in Oakland. In 1961, things got even uglier, a 2-12 finish, dead last in the league. They went through multiple coaching changes and never-ending roster turnover. But in the middle of all that dysfunction, the one constant was Otto. From the very first game in Raiders history, Otto was the starting center, and he gave a shaky new team something it desperately lacked: toughness. He wasn't built like a monster, so he played like one instead. Otto treated every snap like combat. The AFL was raw and chaotic in those days. Defensive linemen threw punches, clawed at face masks, and delivered late hits with no fear of penalties. In fact, Otto lost nearly all his teeth from being hit. It was less organized football and more controlled mayhem. And right in the middle of all that chaos stood Jim Otto, undersized and outmatched on paper, but fighting tooth and nail to make sure no one ever pushed him around. And he did it week after week, year after year, despite a 1-13 record in 1962, despite his nose already being busted multiple times, despite his bruised and cracked ribs. He would regularly walk off the field bloodied, tape wrapped tight around his body just to hold himself together, then jog back into the huddle for the very next series. In 1963, the Oakland Raiders stopped being a punchline and started becoming a problem. That was the year new head coach Al Davis took over. Davis wanted speed, swagger, and a nasty edge that made opponents dread Sundays. And in Jim Otto, he already had the perfect anchor. Otto was the most punishing center in the AFL. He played with broken fingers taped together, knees screaming, and a constant stream of cuts and bruises across his face.
You could always recognize him because he always was bleeding. He had blood all over his face, his nose was always cut, his fingers were always twisted.
That year, Davis's vision took shape, and Otto was at the center of it all. Literally, the Raiders went from a struggling afterthought to a 10-4 contender, their first winning season in franchise history. And for Otto, 1963 was the year the rest of the league officially took notice of him. But by now, his nose had been broken so many times it barely resembled what it once was, and his knees started giving him trouble, but he kept playing.
And he went through a lot of pain, but he loved playing so much that he just didn't know when to give it up. He loved it just that much, and you could always recognize him because he was always there.
I was paid to play football, not hang out in the training room. Otto wrote that in his book, The Pain of Glory. Then came 1967, the year Oakland exploded. With new quarterback Darryl LaMonica, nicknamed the Mad Bomber slinging deep passes, the Raiders unleashed an offense that terrified defenses. They finished 13-1, the best record in the AFL, as they scored a league-high 468 points, averaging over 33 points per game. And by now, Otto wasn't just respected, he was feared. But what made his season legendary wasn't the accolades or the wins, it was how much he endured just to be out there. His nose was shattered yet again, his ribs were constantly bruised, his knees were deteriorating. He was being held together by tape, injections, and pure willpower. One season, Otto cracked his ribs so badly, he had to wrap his torso in layers of tape just to breathe. On top of that, he developed double pneumonia, coughing blood between plays, and yet he still didn't miss a game. And then in December 1967, it all paid off. The Raiders dismantled the Houston Oilers 40-7 in the AFL Championship, giving Oakland its first league title. That win punched the Raiders' ticket to Super Bowl II, where they faced Vince Lombardi's powerhouse Green Bay Packers. Otto battled through the game like always, but the Raiders were outmatched and fell 33-14. Oakland was now a contender, and Otto was the steadying presence in the middle of their chaos. Despite the injuries, despite the mounting toll on his body, Otto was still regarded as the premier center in the league. His dominance was recognized year after year. He became the only player in AFL history to be named an All-Star in every single season of the league's existence. In 1969, the Raiders pushed deep again, reaching the AFL Championship game. Once more, Otto was there for every snap, the heartbeat of a roster loaded with stars. His streak of consecutive starts was still intact, even as his body begged him to stop. But Otto, well, he didn't know how to stop. Otto said his injuries were the battle scars of the gladiator. The gladiator goes until he can't go anymore. When the AFL and the NFL officially merged in 1970, a new question arose. Could the flashier AFL players hang with the established, hard-nosed NFL veterans? But for Jim Otto, that was never even a question. He walked into the new era already scarred, stitched, and limping, but he immediately proved he belonged among the NFL's elite. One of the nastiest moments was when Otto played with his jaw wired shut after it was shattered in a game. He couldn't eat solid food, couldn't even talk normally, but still made every line call and every snap for the Raiders. He made the Pro Bowl in his very first NFL season, sending a loud message that he wasn't just an AFL legend. He was one of the greatest centers the game had ever seen. The rival Kansas City Chiefs linebacker Bobby Bell said, "Jim's the best center I ever played against, bar none. He was a fighter, hard to keep down."
Double zeros, when you see double zeros, it's not good at all. You want to stay away as far as you can from the double zero man.
The Raiders, well, they continued their tradition of heartbreak during these years, making deep playoff runs only to fall short of the Super Bowl. But no matter how the season ended, Otto's consistency never wavered. By the early 1970s, Jim Otto was named Mr. Raider. The nickname had been floating around for years. Now it was locked in as fact. But the truth was, Otto's body was breaking, and badly. He had already endured more than a dozen major surgeries. His knees had been sliced open and stitched back together so many times that even standing up from a chair was painful. His shoulders were barely functional, held together by scar tissue and tape. Bones had been reset, ligaments reattached, and cartilage scraped away until there was almost nothing left. Every step off the field was a reminder of how much the game had taken from him. And yet, when Sunday arrived, Otto transformed. Teammates said it was like watching a man flip a switch.
He was one of the toughest players that ever played in football. I mean, you talk about blood and guts. That guy would be banged up. He would be bleeding in a huddle, blood dripping down through his face mask.
In 1973 and 1974, as the Raiders stayed in the thick of the playoff hunt, Otto was still the stalwart of the offense. But finally, in 1974, after 15 punishing seasons, Otto walked away. He was the living embodiment of the franchise's grit, toughness, and refusal to quit.
I did everything against a lot of these guys to be the best I could and give them a real pain in the neck. That's what I tried to do every time I played. I'm not the best there is, but I'll fight anybody that thinks they're better.
Otto would undergo around 74 surgeries tied directly to the damage football inflicted. 28 of those were on his knees alone. Both knees and both shoulders were replaced. His back and neck were operated on multiple times, including spinal fusions where vertebrae were literally bolted together. He endured 20-plus broken noses, broken ribs, broke every finger, and even a broken jaw that had to be wired shut. But none of that kept him off the field. His teeth were kicked in. He suffered nerve injuries that made his arms go numb. He fought through double pneumonia, and still he showed up on Sunday. He absorbed countless concussions, back when the league barely even recognized him. Otto admitted he would black out, wobble back to the huddle, and still snap the ball on the very next play. This wasn't just a man who played football. This was a man who sacrificed his body and kept going. Because through 15 seasons of violence, pain, and surgeries most people couldn't survive once, Jim Otto never missed a single start. 210 straight regular season games, plus every single playoff game. In fact, he wouldn't even want to take reps off in practice. Head coach John Madden later said his skills as a center were just perfect. He was one of those guys who never wanted to come out of practice. That's the opposite of most starters, who will say, send in the second guy. Jim was the Oakland Raiders center, and he wasn't going to give up his spot. That's why his number, 00, became iconic. It told his entire story. 0 excuses and 0 games missed. However, after his career, the toll only grew worse. Otto battled life-threatening infections from repeated surgeries, surviving 3 separate brushes with death. At one point, he went 6 months without a right knee joint. His leg essentially hollowed out as doctors fought to keep him alive. In 2007, that same leg was amputated above the knee after another infection. He even battled prostate cancer later in life. When you look back at Jim Otto's life, it's easy to get lost in the numbers. 210 straight starts, 74 surgeries, 28 knee operations, 3 near-death experiences, and finally the loss of his leg. It reads like a medical report more than a football resume. But Otto never saw it that way. To him, every scar, every surgery, every broken bone was proof that he had lived the game to its fullest. In fact, Otto told the Sacramento Bee in 2022 that he'd do it all over again, without regret.
That will be with me all my life, and I think that is why I would come back and do it again.
When it comes to the grittiest players of all time, it's easy to look at Brett Favre and his legendary Ironman streak at quarterback, where he played 297 straight games while gutting through sprained ankles, broken thumbs, and all kinds of hits. But Otto's 210-game streak came at a position where every single snap meant colliding with 300-pound defensive linemen head-on. Sure, Ronnie Lott famously had part of his finger amputated so he wouldn't miss time. But Otto had entire joints cut out and replaced, then went right back to playing. And yeah, Ray Lewis was feared for his ferocity, but even he never endured 74 surgeries, spinal fusions, and a leg amputation as the price of his career. The truth is, no one in NFL history absorbed more punishment, kept coming back, and redefined what toughness meant, like Jim Otto did. Pain is a state of mind, Otto said. I got used to it. If my nose wasn't broken during a game, I wondered if I played hard enough. If my helmet didn't have extra scuff marks, I wondered if I was hitting hard enough.
Commitment to excellence, pride and poise, the greatness of our football team were not only exemplified by Jim Otto, but for more than a decade, he was the standard of excellence by which centers were judged in professional football.
That was Jim Otto, the grittiest player in NFL history.
Jim Otto, 00, the ultimate Raider.
If you enjoyed this video, stick with Blitz. Subscribe and check out some of our other content right here.